The BenRiach Triple Distilled 10-year-old travel retail, 43% ABV, and a very special Starward single malt Australian whiskey. This is bottle number 240. Now, what are these like, and should you be seeking them out? Stay tuned for the Whiskey Whistle. Hey, my whiskey people, Annyeong, Mark here on Whiskey Whistle in Seoul, South Korea, the center of Northeast Asia, bringing you a two-up of two totally different whiskeys that I'm putting together just because I can and because I really want to showcase this interesting Australian single malt, but also this very unusual BenRiach that I picked up as I landed at a duty-free shop right at the baggage collection area. There's another duty-free shop that opened in South Korea, so I could pick up only one bottle. So I chose this one. And we'll discuss whether that was a good idea or not. But anyway, let's get these poured first of all. So this is a triple distilled BenRiach, and I think, as you probably know, that's not the norm for them, is it? Normally, they are double distilled, like almost 95-99% of all Scotch single malt whiskeys. There's a couple of exceptions. Nice healthy pour. Get the cork back on. So that's a travel retail, and it is from their older range. So they've done a complete rebranding with all new labels and all different expressions now. This one is from 2017. So it's a Rachel Berry creation. She's got her signature right here on the canister and on the bottle as well. Yep. Now that's a 70 centiliter, 700 milliliter bottle. Travel retail, I feel like that should be a liter. I don't think I assumed that it was. I knew it was smaller. The price was pretty good, but I feel like now that I've tried it, that the full liter would have been nice, since you're going with 43% ABV and a younger 10-year-old expression. That's just my opinion. Let's get this Starward poured. Now this comes from a WhiskyWhistle patron who donates, let's say, physically to the channel. So that's Joe Gulino. Thank you very much. He's become a member of the Winnipeg Whiskey Club. He is in Chicago, and they've got way more access to fantastic things. Chicago itself and Alberta are pretty much neck and neck, but I feel like they get more interesting releases in Chicago than in Alberta. They've got more population in Illinois. So, okay, so Starward single cask, bottle number 240. Now get this, distilled in the 12th month of 2016 and bottled in the 6th month of 2020. So this is 3.5 years old, which is incredible. That's incredible. The casking, it's a wine barrique from the Barossa Valley. Okay, so that's great. And they finished it in a charred French oak cask, which is very unique because normally French oak is toasted and not charred. We'll get that poured, and we'll see the immense difference in color. Joe had nothing about raves to say about this one. Save myself a little bit for another day. But, so he sent it to me, and, huge thanks. I send him a few things his way, as well as with the club tastings that he joins. So let's look at the two colors side by side, first of all. The BenRiach, I will assume, is unnatural in color. So 2017, I would assume so. It doesn't say on the canister, and it doesn't say so on the label either. Well, so in that case, we should assume that there's a bit of color added here, and it should also be noted that the company, the BenRiach Distilling Company, the BenRiach Distillery Co. Limited, which operates also Glendronach as well as Glenglassa, have decided to start chill filtering their whiskeys again. That's been talked about at length, and I would advise you to look at a series of reviews and commentary from Ralphie. So check out ralphie.com, check out his YouTube channel, Ralphie Mitchell. If you just type in Ralphie, R-A-L-F-Y, into YouTube, he'll be, I think, the very first result. Okay, he's got about, I think, closing on 200,000 subscribers. He's been at it for about 11 or 11 and a half years. And probably he's been into whiskey now, I would say maybe close to 30 of those, 30 years. So a lot of knowledge there. But I won't get into that. But what I will say, and that he also mentioned, is that what they're doing by chill filtering is they're appealing to the masses, and they're in a way they're taking the easy way out. It would be better for everybody if they just focus on education, and if they, got their distributors to give short lessons at all of the stores, travel retail, online stores, so that the staff can effectively communicate with new customers who aren't aware as to why higher strength is better, as to why unchill filtered is better, as to why no color added is better. These are all things that take time to educate to the masses. For the whiskey geeks, of course, we all feel ripped off entirely. But anyway, I'm glad to have this older release, and I was very attracted to the fact that it was triple distilled. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's get into, first of all, the legs of these two whiskeys. I certainly poured more of the BenRiach than I did of the Starward. Okay, here we go. All right, what do we see for legs? As you'd expect, it started pretty briskly over on BenRiach, but the Starward, quite slow to show, quite slow to trickle down. And by the way, I don't have an ABV listed on this. I will put it on there after the fact. Extremely slow. And for me, the reason for that is going to be the cask influence. The composites, I hate saying chemicals, but the compounds coming from the cask into the whiskey, be it the content, the wine, or be it actual sugars from the wood and other things that are in the wood that eventually get steeped like tea into the whiskey. Okay, so that makes a big difference in color. We'll check that out in a minute, and we'll start with the BenRiach 10-year-old. Now, it's very fresh, light, and fruity. When I first nosed this, the first glass, the neck pour, I thought to myself, this is a dead ringer for Irish whiskey. Irish whiskey being triple distilled. And still now, when I smell this, it could still very well be it would hold up as a recognizable flavor and smell belonging to Ireland. I didn't get any of the PX. This has triple distilled and then double maturation. The double maturation is, doesn't say there. Okay, bourbon barrels and first fill bourbon barrels and Pedro Jimenez sherry casks. Does that mean first fill PX? It's hard to tell from the language there. Oh yes, finally on the back it clarifies. And first fill PX sherry casks. It's, let's say 60-40, so pretty good ratio. Anyway, at first I couldn't smell any sherry whatsoever. All I got was this kind of like icing sugar, intense, bright sweetness, like lemon sugar. Okay, so now I'm getting some barley. Korean barley tea, boricha. Some light, fresh strawberry and raspberry in there, which is very nice. A little bit of leathery wood smokiness. I don't want to read the notes there. They say a green apple skin. I don't get that. Maybe I got that at the very first, but I don't get it now. They mention, this is interesting. They mention icing sugar. They say lychee, I say strawberry. And they mention sweet barley, and I mentioned the barley tea. So interesting. And I swear to goodness, I did not read those notes. They were staring at me on the back label. And, you know, that's the thing. When you grow up with a language, the written word speaks to you, even if you're not actually reading it. So passively, it just jumped out on my face. And of course the framing. Now I'm getting this green apple, but I think icing sugar, the barley tea, that bit of leather, and maybe that's the, when I say strawberry plus leather, maybe that's the lychee that they're talking about. No, I don't get lychee here though at all. Okay, on to the palate. At first, though it was really in line with Irish whiskey, it's now more dedicatedly Scotch whiskey after this much time in the bottle, about 2 weeks, in fact 12 days to the day, and we're down to about you know, I think I've drunk about 40% of the bottle already. Oh my god, maybe 35. I'm getting some really intense leather and strawberry. And I'm happy to find the leather here. It's a little bit unbalanced though. It's like a wall of leather with a little bit of strawberry jam slathered on it. And I wonder, is there a little bit of peat influence? There very well may be, because BenRiach, of course, does peat a lot of their whiskeys. I'll say that there's definitely a phenolic ppm earmark earmarked note coming from this. Whether that is from the peat itself, whether that's from the distillery having some remnant of peat from batch to batch, or if that's just simply from the yeast, the barley and the fermentation, etc. Hard to say. Of course, it's a single malt, but it really reminds me of Chivas Regal about 5 years ago. I haven't tried it since. With its bit of sherry, with its clearly old aged malt, or at least old casks involved there, old wet casks. You see, when you're blending with distilleries you own, when the cask is emptied in a distillery, it can be shipped and filled immediately. Basically the same day in Scotland. And a wet cask, holds, let's say, 8 liters of whiskey in its staves. So you're putting in, what if let's say it's a 200 liter barrel, you're putting 200 liters in, then you've got the 8 liters in the staves, okay? So you've got almost 5% of the whiskey in that barrel being previous content, which then ages a further period. So when you read traditional whiskey casks, there's good ones and of course there's bad ones. The good ones really do a good job of maturing whiskey and keeping a linkage to the past in a way. %, was about just right with water. Not a real big difference, but it just gets watery. It just tastes watered down now. The nose is muted. The bourbon, the first little bourbon that they used, I'll tell you, it was too young. Definitely less than 4 years, I think. Or just 4 years, and they were, let's say, Jim Beam casks. Well, no. Obviously, no, they couldn't have been. No, there's no way that they could be Jack Daniel's barrels yet because they didn't buy the distillery until 2016. So, it's interesting. I enjoy it, but I can't drink too much of it. And yeah, I think I could have made a better choice. Again, it's not bad. The price was good. The strength is good. It's triple distilled. It's interesting. I like the leather that's in there. I like the strawberry notes. I like what I'm getting on the nose and the palate. The first neck pour was really abruptly disheartening. It almost left me wondering what were they thinking. And that brings me to my final point. So, should a company like BenRiach, who makes exceptional whiskey that's double distilled, should they bother with triple distillation? Especially if they're just going to do it periodically. Should they bother? Or should they do what Springbank does and make a whole separate label and have a regular release that's available all the time, so that way they can really work on developing the character right with still cuts, etc., and they can hone their work, and the bad casks can go to a blender. The good casks then get to stay, right? So this is what I wonder. So when companies do something markedly different, like triple distillation here, like a peated release for Glenmorangie recently, it was good, but just doesn't really work. Doesn't really work. So subtle changes, go for it, right? But a big change is a big risk here. And I wonder how this did, given the fact that that's from 2017 and it's still available in Korea. Pandemic or no pandemic, tells me that probably not the best performer for them. Anyway, on to the WhiskyWhistle Whiskey Score for the BenRiach 10-year-old triple distilled travel retail. What is that going to be, folks? It's going to be 83 out of 100. You heard it, 83 out of 100 is the WhiskyWhistle Whiskey Score for the BenRiach triple distilled 10-year-old. High five. Yeah, I'll probably leave this here and let my mother-in-law enjoy that. I think she might enjoy, especially in the summer. It's a good whiskey for the summer. I will say that, being triple distilled. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get into Starward, this very interesting private cask. Very cool. Before we get into that, make sure you check me out on Patreon, patreon.com/WhiskyWhistle. Don't forget to like this video, give it a thumbs up, and leave me a comment. Have you tried this BenRiach 10? What do you think about distilleries making a massive change for a single release? Is it good? Is it bad? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let me know, okay? And subscribe to the channel, all right? Okay, into Starward. Thanks, Joe. The nose. The nose is slightly muted, but some really nice candy, juicy, fruity flavors. Some nice dark baked goods flavors, like dark muffins. Say, I wouldn't know, not a chocolate muffin, but let's say like a cinnamon spice muffin. This reminds me a little bit of the Two Brewers special cask release number 1 that I just did. It's got some chocolate in there. More like cocoa. Walnut. Love that. I love the walnut in whiskey. The palate. Cheers. Cheers, Joe. Kombe. It's got a tannic astringency to it, but pretty sippable for 3.5 years old. Wait, what? Yes, 3.5 years old. What I mentioned about wet casks is also true for a lot of, at least so far, what I've tried from Australia. Australian whiskeys. We have wet casks going on here. So we've got this wet wine barrique, which has a big impact. Again, that's roughly 5% of the liquid volume of that cask is the old content. But it's amazing. It's 3 years old. And very much like the Roquefort Coriol White Pork Cask. It's doing great at 3 years, 3.5 years. Fantastic. Spicy, fruity. We've got nutmeg. We have peach pie. And yes, peach pie, nutmeg. Ooh, that's nice. I gather that was a, like a white wine, golden wine, dark brown wine type of a barrique. With water added, you get more of the wine coming out. So I'm getting some clear wine, subtle yeastiness coming through. Wine cork. The oak barrel, the way that barrel smells, and I know because I've put wine in barrels and I know what it smells like. You get that nice warm oaky vanillins. And that charred French oak cask is, I think that's what's giving it this really astringent nose, dry, gingery nose. Ginger, 생각났어. The palate with water as well. I get more of the wine content coming through. But it's really delicious, and it's really a wine lover's whiskey, a sweet whiskey lover's whiskey. Quite nice. And I feel so lucky to be trying another Australian whiskey. I don't have all the names because I don't have access to them, right? So my memory is very much experiential. With water, some delicate freesia flower coming through. Edible flower. The finish is medium. The oak tannins carry a long time. The sweetness of the whiskey, about medium. Well, really quite interesting. Enjoy that, and I would say if you do see a Starward, give it a try, because I think this actually fills a spot on the whiskey shelf that isn't really occupied so well, and that's a wine matured whiskey. There's some Glengarry wine matureds that are excellent. We've got the Starward, we've got, those are matured, right? You do have lots of wine finishes, but as for fully matured wine barrel whiskeys, they're few and far between. All right, on to the WhiskyWhistle whiskey score for Starward. Single cask bottle 240. What is that going to be, folks? It's going to be 90 out of 100. You heard it, 90 out of 100 is the WhiskyWhistle whiskey score for Starward, release 204. Quite nice. I will kiss the glass and have one more taste. Very nice. Great stuff. Thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you for the next one. Bye now.